Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My 2 Cent video for this week, for the week of July 27th to August 2nd and all. And I just want to say there won't be any video review for this week, mostly because I am basically I want to do some work around my condo, do some stuff here and there. I originally was going to do it last week, but Fantastic Four, the first step came out, and I wanted to go see that one and do a review on that one, which I have that video up on YouTube and all. So, yeah, there won't be any video review for this week and all. But anyway, we got 4 stories to cover, including the Nintendo Direct / Partner Showcase that happened this week, though. Xbox or Microsoft released their annual, their financial report, including in terms of where the Xbox brand is and everything. Sony viewing Tencent over what is essentially viewed as basically them copying the Horizon series and everything like that. And an interesting report that indicates that we could see actual PlayStation games not only make their way to the Xbox, but also the possibility to the Switch 2 and all. And if you're interested in where I got the source of these informations, links will be in the description of this video. It's from you watching this on YouTube. And of course, timestamps will also be in the description of this video as well. But before we get started, I like to do what I like to call the quick My 2 Cents, stories that kind of caught my attention, but I'm not going to go into a huge amount of details. The first one has to do with the Nintendo Switch library did expand this week with the interesting release, and that is the release of Mario Paint. That's right, this was a game originally released back in the 90s for the Super Nintendo, and it came with like the Super Nintendo mouse and all. It was an interesting, you could create your own pictures, music, even do some animation, to even like did something which was called Coffee Break, which is basically a fly swatter type game. You basically use the Super Nintendo mouse, and it's going to be available on both the Switch 2 and the Nintendo Switch. For those who have the Switch 1, you could plug in a mouse through, I think, a USB port and play it with that. For the Switch 2 owners, you could take advantage of the Switch 2's mouse functionality on there and use that to play Mario Paint. So very neat indeed to see Mario Paint make its way over to the Nintendo Switch online service. So that one was kind of a little bit of a surprise and all. We also learned that the upcoming release of Ninja Gaiden Ragebound for at least the Switch 1 will average at 30 frames per second on the Switch 1 compared to the other consoles. However, they did mention, since the Switch 2 is backwards compatibility, they did mention that it will take advantage of certain things for the Switch 2. Remains to be seen if it will run. It means that this will run at 60 frames per second or not, though. But for those who are playing this on the Switch 1, expect to see this game run, at least according to what the developers are saying, running at 30 frames per second. And last but not least, it seems to indicate that Warner Brothers Games is going to continue doing another live service all, despite the disaster that happened with Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League and how that bombed really badly and all. So to me, though, I'm not really shocked by this, and I just can't help but shake the feeling that a lot of these AAA studios that try to push this live service, they don't seem to learn from the mistakes and everything like that. And to me, it's very difficult to get a live service game up and running to really pull an audience and everything like that. You really have to, I would say, get it out of the gate good. And obviously with Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League, that wasn't the case and all. And so I'm not shocked that they're doing another live service game. I just don't know if they'll learn from what happened with Suicide Squad Killed the Justice League or anything like that. So I'm not holding my breath on that one. And in the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, though, we saw the first trailer that came out that also premiered for those who saw the Fantastic Four First Step, which is the next entry in the Avatar series, which is Avatar, Fire, and Ash. The first trailer was out. And I have to say, I'm liking what I'm seeing, though, and it does seem to indicate that we're going to see like the Fire Tribe and everything with the third entry and all. And I do wonder if they are in a way somewhat playing the villain to a certain degree based off what I saw in the trailer compared to how the first two movies, it turned out to be the humans or the corporation being sort of the villains and all in that one. So a little curious to see how this one will do and all, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on this one, including, especially along with Tron Arise. That one is also I'm keeping an eye on watching. We also learned that the Direct put out an article about missed opportunities for Phase 5 and, the whole multiverse saga and all. And I will say that some of it I do kind of agree with, that the fact that there were some hit and misses with Phase 5 though. While some things like Loki Season 2 to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Deadpool and Wolverine were great, others just weren't as there as a lot of us would have hoped for, to be exact. So it did feel like there was just certainly some areas that was mishandled compared to how the Infinite Saga was. So hopefully with the multiverse saga behind us, hopefully that means that the next saga, whatever that might be, hopefully Marvel has sort of cleared things up to try to do a better approach than what we saw during the multiverse saga and all. We also learned that HBO Max is removing Cartoon Network series, especially with the recent movie of Courage the Cowardly Dog. I am a little disappointed with this and all. It seems that they want to go back to basically being for adults only, which is okay, but at the same time, I don't understand why you can't have like Looney Tunes stuff and everything on basically HBO Max or everything. I think it was just a ridiculous decision on their part. I think since it's owned by Warner Brothers and all, and this some has to do with it with both, I think, Warner Brothers and WB, and I think Discovery kind of splitting to a certain degree. So I just think it's a ridiculous decision on their part to say, though. We also learned that basically, so far it seems that the Fantastic Four First Fifth is certainly doing very well at the box office. We've heard some pretty good numbers, along with the Superman movie, which last time I heard that one crossed over the 500 million, which is great. And we're also learning about how two other movies this week, Bad Guys 2 and the supposedly Naked Gun reboot, seems to be doing very well for its first week at the box office. We'll see how well that one does, but so far, Fantastic Four is doing very well for Marvel, so that certainly must put a smile on their face after some mixed box office with, Captain America Brave New World and Thunderbolt. And last but not least, one of the actors talked about the third Fantastic Four movie that was scrapped. This was when Fantastic Four was under 20th Century Fox. You had the first one and then Rise of the Silver Surfer. And there was confidence that they would probably do a third one, but ultimately that was up to what 20th Century Fox would say. Some of it may have to do with the box office didn't do as well as basically 20th Century Fox back then wanted. And so obviously they scrapped that and went with, the infamous 2015 reboot, which bombed very hard at the box office. And we all know the drama surrounding that one, indeed. And so that led to basically what we got the Marvel MCU Fantastic Four The First Step, which I did enjoy it, okay? I definitely enjoyed that one, but still, I will say it would have been interesting to see how that third Fantastic Four movie would have happened and all. Okay, with the Quick My 2 Cent part now done, along with the movie and TV show part of the Quick My 2 Cent, we'll get started with our first story, and this one has to do with PlayStation games on other systems and everything. Now, one of the things we saw during this generation of consoles, or especially around when Switch 1 came out, was a complete shift on the idea of exclusivity and everything like that. Originally, the idea is basically you buy a system for its exclusivity and all, and we've seen that with companies like Nintendo, which still holds on to that approach, and so far that approach has not had a negative impact, as we've seen, the Switch 2 is doing very well and everything based on the Satana numbers that have come out though. But we've seen companies like Microsoft really kind of push the multi-platform approach while maintaining their own system and all. We saw this when it was announced that Cuphead was coming to the Switch 1 and other systems, And this kind of raised the question of whether or not we could see other games down the road. And since then, Microsoft really has doubled down on this approach, to be exact. We now have games like, The Outer Worlds 2 coming to multiple systems, though. We're now learning that Gears Reload is coming to the PS5 and everything. Even games like Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, and Pendaments, and Forza Horizon 5 have made their way to other systems, to which surprisingly have sold very well on the PS5 and everything. So it's been very interesting, and up to this point, we've seen Sony and Nintendo has sort of stayed exclusive. However, Sony has kind of dipped their toes to a certain degree, as we have started to see them port a lot of their games to the PC, although there's been some questions about the quality of those titles. And then most recently, Helldivers 2 is making its way over to the Xbox systems and everything like that. And many wonder if basically this means that Sony could make their way, take the approach that Microsoft is doing and start putting their first-party games onto their systems, or even on Nintendo system and all. Well, according to a report from FinalWeapon.net, it seems that Sony may be taking an approach similar to what Microsoft's doing and embracing a multi-platform approach. Anyway, the article states, let me get that out of the way. Oh, whoops, my bad. Anyway, the article states that Sony is hiring for a new senior director of multi-platform and account management at PlayStation as part of a new business strategy to bring games to multiple platforms, including Nintendo, Xbox, Steam, and Epic Game Stores. Players first saw an inkling of the multi-platform strategy when Sony licensed its IP to Bandai Namco, allowing them to bring Everybody's Golf, Hot Shot, Papaton 1+2 Replay, and Freedom Wars Remastered to Nintendo Switch and PC this year. The overview of the new jobs listing reports to Vice President Commercial Management as Senior Director of Multi-Platform and Account Management. You will play a critical leadership role in shaping and executing the global commercial strategy for PlayStation Store software's titles across all digital platforms beyond PlayStation hardware, including Steam, Epic Games Store, Xbox, Nintendo, and mobile. This role is accountable for optimizing titles, profitability, ensuring cross-function alignment, and leading a high-performance team focusing on multi-platform expansion, mid-range commercial planning, and platforming partner management. The job listings also reads that the new hire will be leading platform relationships across PC and console ecosystem, ensuring there's a strong collaboration, promotional effectiveness, and performance optimization. In short, the hire will help lead Sony and his team in order to bring PlayStation games to Nintendo Switch 2, Xbox Series X and S, and PC, along with other services that may be working across platforms as well. Moreover, the hire will direct and develop a team of senior management for multi-platform strategies at Sony. This includes reporting to senior management of platforming sales and the management of platform planning and performance for PC and Xbox at Sony. Now, there are some folks who are making the claim that this may just, before anybody starts talking or anything like that, are saying that this may be just only applying to their live service games, aka Helldivers 2 and all, to possibly doing, maybe older titles and all, making their way to other systems though. And that could be true though. I mean, Everybody's Golf is a smaller IP from PlayStation, yet Bandai Namco is handling that one, and so is Freedom Wars. But either case though, this is very interesting indeed. This is really interesting to see Sony taking this kind of approach and everything like that, because one of the big reasons the PS5 has kind of sold well is to some extent the exclusivity and everything like that, although many would point to the larger user base and games like Call of Duty, which is also true to be exact as well. But to see them basically porting over some of their titles to other platforms is very interesting indeed, and I do think it could open the door to the possibility of maybe some of their games coming to the Switch 2 and all. I mean, it's possible we could see something like maybe the Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank series, or Medieval make its way to the Switch 2. That's a possibility. To even maybe reviving some even older titles, like maybe the Dark Cloud series, a Rogue Galaxy, games or certain games that have remained dormant at Sony for such a long time, or even Abe Escape, or Legend of Dragoon, if I'm saying the name correctly, or Wild Arms. So it opens the door to those kinds of possibilities, indeed. And I certainly don't view that as a bad thing. But at the same time, it could mean we could see titles like, maybe Neo make its way to other systems outside of the PlayStation and PC, Rise of Ronin, to even maybe the Spider-Man 1, the Spider-Man 1 and 2 games, to even, God of War. So there is that possibility, or it could help maybe port games like the Infamous or Resistance series, like those type of games as well. So this opens the doors to a lot of possibilities. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see how they approach this and how this is all going to play out. It's also possible they could do what they did with Everybody's Golf and have Bandai Namco handle porting these games to other systems. That too is also a possibility. I know they have a relationship with Bandai Namco, just like Nintendo does with Bandai Namco, with them helping on Mario Kart and Super Smash Brothers. So there's a lot of ways this could play out, and time will ultimately tell how it does. So overall, very interesting indeed that Sony is taking this approach. I'm very curious to see how this all plays out in the end, and it could leave the Switch 2 as the only remaining system at this time with like exclusives that you could only find on their system and on the Nintendo system, indeed. So very interesting. I'm going to be really interested to see how this all plays out for Sony, and just how far would they exactly follow in terms of Sony's approach and everything. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2. And this one has to do with a lawsuit that Sony is filing against Tencent over what they claim as a copycat or a shameless ripoff of their Horizon series. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my 2 cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at a lawsuit that Sony has recently filed against Tencent, and this has to do with what they're claiming and what some may view as a blatant ripoff of basically the Horizon series that Tencent is putting out. Now, Tencent is a name that has been known for a lot of folks who are into gaming and everything, and they've often been viewed in a way to some degree as a negative light. While they have seen to become and have bought companies or focus on investing in some of these companies, they've also been viewed negatively to some degree, mainly because they are run a company owned by the Chinese government, and this brings up the whole issue of the whole issue of what we saw with the Blitzchung situation back in 2019, and how it brings up the issue of these companies doing business in countries that are known to have not so great human rights and all. But we've also seen, in some cases, companies also sue other companies over what many view as basically blatantly copying their games to a certain degree, though. Recently, we were seeing with Nintendo suing Pal World, and this has to do over, the developers of Pal World, over the whole game setup in terms of the capturing monsters and everything similar to Pokemon. Whether or not Nintendo will succeed on that remains to be seen, but given their track record and history, I will say it will be very interesting to see how well they do. They have a good, Nintendo, whether you like them or hate them, have a good legal track record with these lawsuits and everything, but we'll see how that one plays out. Well, now it looks like Sony is going after Tencent, and this has to do with sort of a game that they put out, though, that many are pointing towards it being what they feel is a shameless copying or of basically the Horizon series and all. In an article from Push Square, it reads that, quote, Sony's legal team thinks Light of Mortarim, if I'm saying that correctly, has crossed the line and is suing Chinese giant Tencent over the salvaged Horizon clone. According to Reuters, the platform holders filed a lawsuit against the ripoff on July 25th, citing copyright and trademark infringement Its ultimate goal is to prevent the game from releasing. Tencent copying of Horizon is so blatant that the public has described it as crazy, insane, and shameless, the lawsuit has claimed. Even wilder is a revelation from GameSpot that Tencent purposely approached Sony with the pitch to license the Horizon IP when the platform holder promptly denied. The lawsuit argues that Tencent is tricking customers into believing Light of Mortaram is the next official Horizon game, causing irreparable injuries. The firm's demanding $150,000 in damages and wants access to all Light of Mortaram's materials so it can destroy them. The article also reads, to be fair, this release is pitched more as a survival game than Guerrilla's effort, although its promotional artwork is almost indescribable. I'm saying that incorrectly though. It'll be interesting to see the outcome here, especially with Nintendo's ongoing litigation against Palworld bubbling into the background. The latter has since made altercations to its game in an attempt to appeal to the Pokemon owner. So yeah, it does look like that Sony's going down the same route Nintendo has done and all. Now, will Sony succeed or not? Remains to be seen at this time, though. I mean, similar to how my view with Nintendo, though, it remains to be seen if they will succeed in stopping Palworld or not, though. And it will also be interesting to see if the developers over at Tencent or whoever they have decide to alter or change some of the stuff to try to avoid this lawsuit or not, though. But still, it is very interesting to see this happen, though. I mean, I get the fact that Sony, like Nintendo, wants to protect their IP, although there are times I do think some of these companies do go a wee bit overboard here and there to a certain extent, though. But it will still be very interesting to see how this lawsuit is going to play out and all. I mean, it's possible it could be settled out of court. It is possible we may not see it made, and Sony could drop the lawsuit or something like that. So time will ultimately tell, though. I can understand how some people are calling it a shameless ripoff. I mean, I remember when Genshin Impact came out, some people called it a shameless ripoff of the Zelda series or Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom to a certain extent, yet somehow that game is still available, to play and download and everything, and so far we have yet to see Nintendo make any action against Genshin Impact, so it's possible that that's what could happen with this Light of Mortaram, if I'm saying the name correctly, over this Horizon thing, though. But time will ultimately tell how that all plays out. So overall, I am not shocked to see Sony take the approach that Nintendo's doing with Palworld and all and sue Tencent over what they view as downright copying their game and all. Whether or not Sony is successful or not, that remains to be seen at this time and all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 3. And this one has to do with the earnings report from Microsoft, especially regarding where Xbox, in terms of its hardware and the brand itself, stands and everything. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of my My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Xbox's financial report that recently came out. Now, despite some of the decisions Microsoft has made, some have been questionable, some don't agree with, especially with the layoffs and all, it does seem to indicate that over the years and everything, they've been, I would say, in a good position, to be exact, though. A lot of people question because of the Xbox hardware sale, because of their decision to take this multi-platform approach, and many are wondering if Game Pass is sustainable or not. Well, recently they put out their report in terms of, or their financial report out there, and depending on how you want to read it, based off of what Microsoft has put out, it does seem, outside of at least the hardware side, though, it seems that Xbox, the brand itself, seems to be doing very well for Microsoft and all. Now, this is sort of a Cliff Note one, and this is from the Game World Observe, and it points out that quote, over the years, Microsoft gaming division earned more than $23 billion, though. The Microsoft Corporation has released its financial report for the fiscal year 2025, which ends on June 30th. It highlights a new record set by its gaming division and the success of Game Pass subscription. According to the reports, and this is sort of kind of a cliff note type of approach, Xbox revenue increased by 9%, reaching an all-time high of $23.45 billion. Out of this, $5 billion was generated by Game Pass, according to Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella. The subscription service has never generated so much money in any previous year, which I will say for the record, that's kind of interesting considering there are some who are claiming the subscription for Game Pass has stagnated or hasn't grown at the level that they have hoped for, but at least according to Microsoft, it seems to be generating a lot of money and all. Overall, revenue from Xbox content and services sales grew by 16%. Game Pass and games from Activision Blizzard contributed significant to this growth, which could explain why Microsoft chose to buy Activision Blizzard and all. Meanwhile, revenue for gaming hardware fell by 25% due to decrease in console sales. That's something we kind of have seen basically on a lot of their Microsoft's fiscal report, at least on the hardware side. Yet they're still moving ahead with a next generation console and everything. Throughout the years, Xbox Cloud gaming users spent over 500 million hours playing on the service. At the end of the fiscal year, the total number of monthly active players across all Microsoft platform devices remains at 500 million, the same as it was a year ago, which I guess you could view that as either a good or a bad thing. I'm the exact. Great that the number didn't decrease, but at the same time, it doesn't sound like it increased in any way. And last but not least, currently Xbox-owned studios are working on nearly 40 new games, which, given Microsoft's approach lately, though, it does seem to indicate a lot of those games, I don't know if all of it, but a lot of it is most likely will be multi-platform bound, given the approach Microsoft has been taking lately. So it does seem to indicate outside of the hardware side, the Xbox brand is doing very well, at least according to what Microsoft is basically saying. Obviously, hardware is down, which isn't surprising considering, again, the multi-platform approach that they're taking, but it doesn't seem to have stopped them from, like I said, doing the next-gen console and everything. And what's interesting is that it's almost kind of like you hear that every fiscal report that Microsoft puts out. A lot of their gaming division and stuff seems to be doing well, but their hardware isn't doing as well. But I guess the argument you hear is that they don't rely on the hardware as much as other companies like Sony and Nintendo do to a certain extent and all. So I would say it's a very interesting report that Microsoft puts out, though. I'm very curious to see what the next financial report is going to be for them. Obviously, we'll see what, especially with some of the other games like the upcoming Ninja Gaiden 4 and everything, how that is going to do for them and all. And of course, we know a lot of the top games that they've put out have ranked very high on the PlayStation platform and everything, which I will say as a side note, that's interesting indeed, considering there's been some criticism towards the lack of first-party titles that Sony seems to have somewhat of a hard time putting out, though, and there are many factors you could point into. Game costs, relying too heavily, being too focused on AAA type of experience, their endless quest for live services, so multiple factors you could point to. But in either case, though, it's clear that the Xbox brand is still going strong. It's just not to the same scale as it was in the past, at least on the hardware side. So overall, it looks like things are doing very well for Microsoft with the Xbox brand. Game Pass seems to be doing very well indeed, is generating revenue. It seems to be making money for them, which is certainly good, but it remains to be seen how many more subscribers we got and everything, and whether that has stagnated or not. And obviously, seeing the hardware sales down isn't surprising considering some of the focus Microsoft has been doing lately. So, but in either case, though, I don't see them exiting the gaming market anytime soon. And despite the hardware being down, it doesn't sound like they're abandoning the Xbox hardware anytime soon, at least for now. Doesn't mean that we can't see a change down the road and them go the full approach that what Sega's doing, but at least for the moment, it doesn't seem like they are moving away from that at all. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to our fourth and final part, and this one has to do with my take on the Nintendo Direct / Partner Showcase that happened this week. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our fourth and final part of our My 2 Cent video. And for this one, I want to give you my thoughts and take on the Nintendo Direct / Partner Showcase that happened this week. Now, ever since the Switch 2 came out, we were hoping to see what the first Direct would be post Switch 2 and all. There were many that believed that they would do a June Direct, but that did not happen. And then there were many who were hoping for a July Direct. And well, as we got closer to the end of July, there was some concerns if this was going to happen or not. Though it is worth pointing out that Nintendo didn't do a February Direct in the past, and basically what they did do one, I believe, in March. So sometimes Nintendo doesn't follow its own pattern, despite how some people, look at see when the Directs happen or not. Well, on Wednesday, they did announce that they were doing a partner showcase that was going to be 25 minutes long and all. And after watching the partner showcase on Thursday when it premiered, though, I would say, based on what I saw with this Direct, my takeaway is this. It's not the worst Direct or partner showcase that I've seen Nintendo has done, but this certainly was not the strongest one by any means. It was definitely not as compared to other partner showcases or Directs that we have seen in the past. And that is a little bit unfortunate indeed, especially since this one is coming off following the launch of the Switch 2, which has so far done very well for Nintendo to a certain degree, but still, this one wasn't, I would say this was sort of a weak Direct, at least, or its partner showcase, at least, as far as I saw it. But still, there were some announcements that I did like that they announced in everything. So what I'm going to do is break it down into what I like and what I didn't like, mixed and I'm not 100% sure about, though. In terms of what I liked about this Nintendo Direct / Partner Showcase, I will say that it was really nice that they started off with a brand new entry into the Monster Hunter Story series with Monster Hunter Stories 3. Certainly am looking forward to that one. I did enjoy Monster Hunter Stories 2 when that was brought over to the Nintendo Switch. It's certainly, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the third one plays out. I will admit, I would have liked to have seen Capcom announce other games, like maybe if a Monster Hunter Wild, or a native port of the Resident Evil remake of 2, 3, and 4, and even maybe a native version of Village, or even basically, or Resident Evil 7. But still, nevertheless, it was nice to know that we're getting another entry in the Monster Hunter Story series, so this is what I'll be keeping an eye out for. The other thing is that Square Enix did show some support as well, and I think these were certainly good indeed. Final Fantasy Tactics came out, though. I believe that will be for the Switch 2 and Switch 1, since this Direct is going to focus on Switch 1 and Switch 2 as well. Romancing Saga 2, Revenge of the Seven was also announced during this Direct. So that's certainly nice, and I think there's a report coming out that there will be if you purchase a Switch 1 version, there's a $10 upgrade to the Switch 2 and all. And I think the two ones that definitely caught my attention were basically two new HD 2D games from Square Enix, which is certainly neat because I like the HD 2D games they've done. One is a prequel to Octopath Traveler with Octopath Traveler 0, so that's certainly nice to see that we're getting another brand new entry into the Octopath Traveler series. And another one called The Adventures of Elliot, the Millennium Tale, which looks like an action RPG that they are doing, and some believe it's sort of feels like it's kind of a spiritual successor to the Mana series that Square Enix is known for, which I would say that might be true, considering Octopath Traveler I kind of view as sort of a homage to some of the old school Final Fantasy games, and Triangle Strategy many view as kind of like a contributing or paying homage to the Final Fantasy Tactics game that came out. So certainly nice indeed that we're seeing some Square Enix support. yes, I would have liked to have seen basically, a release date for Final Fantasy VII Integrate, basically for the Switch 2 and all, but still, nevertheless, basically, it's nice to see some support from Square Enix. The next one is they show a bit more of Hyrule Warrior Age of Imprisonment. I would say the game still is looking good and something I'm looking forward to playing, though. I did enjoy Age of Calamity, and I definitely like some of these Nintendo-themed Warriors games. I do feel like they do put more effort into it than what you would view as the traditional Warrior games that usually come out and all. So, looking forward to this another Hyrule Warrior game, but I would like to see Koei Tecmo, Omega Force, and Nintendo do another of Nintendo's IP and use the Warrior formula. Maybe base one off the Xenoblade Chronicles series. That would be neat if they did something like that. The other thing is we saw Sega is showing some support as well for the Switch 2. I mean, we're getting the Yakuza Kiwi 1 and 2 are going to be making their way over to the Switch 2, which is certainly nice. I mean, we've seen Yakuza 0 make its way over to the Director's Cut. And finally, we got confirmed that Persona 3 Reload will be making its way over to the Switch 2, which I think is great indeed. Hopefully, this means that the Persona 4 remake being developed right now will make its way to the Switch 2 as well, along with Metaphor. Hopefully that will make its way to the Switch 2 at some point down the road. So hopefully we'll see more of Atlus's games start coming to the Switch 2 and all. And last but not least, one that kind of surprised me a little bit was to see Chronos: The New Dawn at the Direct. So certainly nice to see that one make its way over for people to try for the Switch 2. Certainly, indeed, as we know, the game is coming to other systems as well. So, and it's being developed by Blooper Team that did the Silent Hill 2 remake. So this one I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye out, indeed, for this one, indeed. As far as what I didn't like or mixed or not 100% sure about, though, I will say that while I have nothing against Plants vs. Zombies or anything like that, it is a fun little game, indeed. I just wondered, did we really need an HD remake of Plants vs. Zombies? And I just think the answer to that is no. I really do not think we need an HD remake. I don't know why they announced a HD remake of Plants vs. Zombies to a certain extent. The other thing is to point out is that most of the games that they have announced already, most of these games were already announced that we knew that were coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 and all. I'm not saying there weren't any surprises here and there. As I mentioned, Square Enix with some of their support, Sega, Chronos: The New Dawn, and of course Monster Hunter Stories 3. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's great that we heard those. But some of these just felt like just rehashes of stuff we already saw from the Switch 2 Direct that happened back in April. And I was hoping to see an update for a release date like ranging from Elden Ring to Final Fantasy VII Integrate. So there was certainly no real, let's just say most of the games were just basically updates for, hey, these games are coming to the system and everything. There's no real like concrete launch date or anything for some of these games that were already announced and everything. So I was a little disappointed with some of the games that the way some of these games were announced. There weren't really any, really big announcements outside of the ones that I mentioned, at least in my view and all. The other thing, which is also leads to the fact that I felt this Direct was just weak, though, just not the strongest Direct out there that Nintendo has done and everything like that. Not saying it's the worst, it's just this one just was like I just didn't really think this one really blew me out of the waters the way that past Nintendo Directs have happened before in the past, though. And last but not least, and I know this is sort of a controversial part depending on who you're asking this question to, and it's probably one that's still going to remain controversial for quite some time, and that is the majority of these games are going to be in the game key cards. Now, this one certainly has caught attention, at least online, as there are some out there who have come out and claim, they're not going to purchase these games on the Switch 2 because of the game key cards and everything like that. And like I said before, I do think the game preservation folks out there do have a fair argument to make, especially when you see a game like Cyberpunk 2077 make its way to the Switch 2, and it's the full game in the Switch 2 cartridge, though, and everything. So, yeah, some of these games are going to be game key cards, and that might not sit well with everyone out there at all. But on the other hand, looking back at the Satana numbers from June 2025, when looking at the top 10 of the games that were basically released on the Nintendo platform, Street Fighter 6 and Fairy Bravely Default, I think Fairy HD Remastered, those games were on game key cards, and yet those sold very well on the Switch 2. So I understand most of these will be game key cards and all, but I'm not sure it's causing as big of a controversy as it is online, as it seems as though that despite that, it looks like folks in the mainstream are willing to buy the game despite it being on a game key card. Not to mention, I view game key cards as the lesser of the two evils, as at the very least, unlike the empty box with a piece of paper, with a code on a piece of paper, this one at the very least, game key cards can be bought used, resold, and are not tied to your account. So yes, they are the lesser of the two evils. I get the fact that there are going to be those who will not purchase these games because of a game key card, but I can understand why some game preservationists are not happy about this. And I mean, it's still going to remain it's going to be still a tricky issue that it's probably going to stick with us for a while across the Switch 2's life cycle and all. So yes, the majority of these games, unfortunately, are going to be game key cards, and that might turn some folks away, indeed. Overall, I would say, as I said before, this was not the strongest Nintendo Direct that I've seen so far. While there were some interesting announcements, and I think that is certainly not a bad thing indeed, it was definitely not the Direct I think a lot of people were hoping for. A lot of us was hoping for maybe ranging from updates on release dates for some games that were announced during the April Switch 2 Direct, to hopefully maybe even some really brand new games out there. This just felt like a Direct that could have worked maybe if the system was later in the Switch 2's life cycle, not close to launch and everything like that. So yeah, I can see why some folks were kind of mixed on this, though. We'll have to wait and see if Nintendo does another Direct down the road. There are many that believe Nintendo will do a September Direct, and that is a possibility. We still need to see some release dates for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, which they're still claiming a 2025 launch date. Some are thinking holiday 2025, but time will only tell if that is the case and everything. But I mean, I will say, compared to the June Direct from maybe last year and all, this definitely was not Nintendo's strongest Direct that we've seen. So we'll see what happens when the next Direct happens, though. I'm hoping for a September Direct, but time will tell whether or not that comes to fruition or not at all. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about this job hiring to bring PlayStation games to other systems and all? Do you think this is a sign to indicate that Sony will take the approach Microsoft has been doing and go multi-platform with a lot of their games while keeping their own system out there? Do you think they're going to take the exact same approach as Microsoft, or do you feel like they might take somewhat of a different approach compared to what Microsoft is doing and all? What are your thoughts about this lawsuit that Sony has filed against Tencent over what they call a shameless Horizon ripoff and all? Do you think Sony has a strong case against Tencent, or do you believe Tencent will be able to overcome whatever Sony throws at them in regards to this lawsuit? What are your thoughts about Microsoft's financial report, particularly with the Xbox part, though? Are you surprised to see that Game Pass is generating revenue? Do you think that you're surprised to see them still making money despite hardware sales being down? And with hardware sales being down, do you think Microsoft should still continue doing hardware, especially with their upcoming next-gen console, or do you feel like we need to take Sega's route and go full third-party altogether? And finally, what are your thoughts about this July 2025's Nintendo Direct? Do you think this was a good Direct? Do you think this was a bad Direct? Do you glad they did a partner showcase, or do you think it would have been better to do a general Direct instead? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me, Patreon, or Steam Labs. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube or Patreon. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye.